All right, let's get into it. A major storm is set to hit the United States over the next few days. And this one is going to be very different from the system we just dealt with. While there is still a risk of severe weather, the bigger story this time is going to be the heavy snowfall that's expected to hit parts of the Central Plains and the Midwest. On top of that, there's another strong push of cold air coming right behind this system, which will reinforce winter conditions in several areas as we move into Wednesday and Thursday. So today, I'm going to break everything down, the timeline, the regions that will be impacted, and what you need to know as we go through the week. If you've been following the recent weather developments, we just experienced a significant and historic tornado outbreak this past weekend. That system, which swept through on Friday and Saturday, produced at least 66 tornadoes across the U.S. Two of them reached F4 strength in northern Arkansas, and one of those came dangerously close to F5 intensity with estimated maximum winds hitting 190 mph. Now, that rating is still preliminary, so there's a chance it could be officially upgraded once damage assessments are complete. Engineers are currently surveying the destruction, and depending on their findings, we may end up with an F5 classification. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Along with those violent tornadoes, there were also 22 F2s and 7 F3s, which is an unusually high number of intense tornadoes from a single system. It was an outbreak of historic proportions, and thankfully, that storm system has now moved offshore. The worst of it is behind us, and the country is getting a brief break from severe weather. But that break won't last long because another storm is already developing, and it's going to bring a completely different set of hazards. This next system will begin making its presence known by Tuesday and Wednesday, but unlike the last storm, the setup for severe weather is much less favorable. That doesn't mean there won't be any storms, but the overall risk is significantly lower. Instead, the bigger concern with this system is going to be heavy snowfall, gusty winds, and fire weather conditions in parts of the plains. As of today, we're seeing high pressure building back over the southeast, which is helping to bring calmer weather in that region. Meanwhile, a bit of cold air on the backside of the departing trough is allowing some light snow to move through parts of the upper Midwest this morning. But the real action kicks off on Tuesday when a new storm system starts forming over the Rocky Mountains. As this system strengthens, it will bring heavy snowfall to the higher elevations. Great news for ski resorts, but not so great for travel conditions. Strong winds will also be a factor, and some localized blizzard conditions could develop in the mountain. By late Tuesday night, the storm will intensify over the Central Plains, and wind speeds will increase dramatically. Even though the setup won't support widespread thunderstorms across Texas, Oklahoma, or Kansas, the powerful winds will create extremely dangerous fire weather conditions. This is a big problem because rainfall has been well below average in these areas, and with everything already dry, strong winds will only make the fire risk worse. Any sparks could spread quickly, so this is something to watch closely over the next few days. As the system continues to develop, heavy snow will start spreading into parts of Wisconsin, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and Minnesota by Wednesday morning. Winter storm conditions are expected in these areas, and by Wednesday afternoon, snow will continue piling up across the Midwest, including places like Kansas City. At the same time, severe weather could start developing in parts of the Midwest and the Southeast, where the atmosphere will still have just enough energy to support some stronger storms. The question is just how widespread or intense that activity will be, and I'll break that down in more detail. By Thursday morning, the system will begin weakening as it pushes toward the East Coast, but a few showers and thunderstorms could linger with the possibility of some strong winds and even an isolated tornado or two in the mid-Atlantic. After that, things should settle down briefly on Friday, but there are already signs that another storm could develop by Sunday. Right now, the long-range computer models aren't in agreement about that, so we'll have to wait and see how things evolve. Some models are showing a large storm that could bring more severe weather to the Ohio Valley and Deep South, while others suggest a much weaker system. I'll be keeping a close eye on it, and we'll bring you updates as soon as we get more clarity. One of the key differences between this upcoming storm and the last one is that the conditions for severe weather just aren't as favorable this time around. A big part of that has to do with moisture levels and atmospheric instability. Looking at the 500 MB wind chart, which gives us an idea of mid-level atmospheric flow, we can see that during the last storm, there was a strong southwesterly flow that helped fuel the severe weather outbreak. That same flow is still lingering along the East Coast, but it's moving out, which means the severe weather threat in that region is over for now. However, by Tuesday and Wednesday, a new storm system will take shape over the Central Plains and the Ohio Valley. This one will be a 985 MB low pressure system, which is about 10 MB weaker than the last storm. That's still strong, but the environment around it just isn't as supportive for severe weather. The wind shear isn't as intense, and more importantly, there's less moisture in place. That means storms will have a harder time getting organized. That being said, there's still a chance for some isolated tornadoes, particularly in parts of Illinois, Indiana, and the Deep South. But this is nothing like the setup we saw last week. If it weren't for the overall storm dynamics being slightly weaker, we might be looking at another significant severe weather event, but that's just not the case this time. One of the biggest limiting factors is the available moisture. By Wednesday afternoon, dew points across the Midwest and Ohio Valley are only expected to be in the low to mid 50s, which is around 5 to 10 degrees lower than what we saw last Friday. That's a big difference because lower dew points mean less instability, making it harder for severe storms to form. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Despite that, there's still a low-end risk of severe weather on Wednesday. Some areas in the Midwest and Deep South could see isolated damaging winds, some hail, and maybe even a couple of tornadoes. By Thursday, that risk shifts toward the mid-Atlantic, but again, the threat is much lower compared to what we just went through. Looking at snowfall potential, parts of the Midwest and Central Plains have a 57% chance of seeing more than 6 inches of snow. Some areas in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa could end up with 6-10 inches, while northern Wisconsin and parts of Michigan's Upper Peninsula could see over a foot. This could be some of the last big snow of the season. So if you're a fan of winter weather, enjoy it while it lasts. Now, the hail threat is much lower, with only a 5 chance of quarter-sized hail in those brown shaded areas. And honestly, we're not seeing a lot of instability out there this evening, so the hail threat is definitely the least of our worries compared to wind and tornadoes. Looking at the radar projection for tonight, we're seeing lines of thunderstorms moving across the Northeast. And these are going to be efficient rain producers, meaning heavy rainfall for places like New York State, Pennsylvania, including the Poconos, Delaware, New Jersey, and Maryland. The further south you go, storms will be a bit more isolated to scattered, but they could still pack a punch. And take a look at this, a fire hose of moisture streaming into the Northeast. Cities like New York City, Hartford, Boston, Concord, New Hampshire, and Portland, Maine. You guys are going to get absolutely soaked overnight into Monday morning. You're heading to work or school across the Northeast, especially along the New England coast. You're going to need an umbrella. And for folks in northern Vermont, New Hampshire, and northwestern Maine, we might even see a little bit of wet snow mixing in. As for rainfall totals, coastal areas will see the heaviest amounts with 1 to 3 inches possible, and even some isolated spots seeing up to 4 inches. That extends from Cape Cod down through Long Island into eastern North Carolina. So isolated flash flooding could be a concern throughout Monday. Switching over to the western U.S., we've got another system to watch. Snowfall is picking up in the higher elevations of the Pacific Northwest, affecting parts of Oregon, Northern California, Idaho, and Western Montana. Lower elevations, places like Portland, Eugene, Medford, and Northern California, are dealing with heavier rain tonight. This moisture is going to push southward, bringing more rain into Central California, especially in the foothill regions. Meanwhile, the Central Sierra Mountains are in for a fresh round of snowfall heading into Monday. By the time we get into Tuesday, snow will continue spreading east, affecting places like Idaho, Nevada, northern Utah, Montana, and Wyoming. In terms of accumulation, the Sierra Nevada and Rockies are in for some big totals, expecting anywhere from 1 to 3 feet of snow with some localized 4-foot totals in the highest elevations, particularly in northwest Wyoming. Now let's take a quick look at temperatures. Behind the cold front that triggered all that severe weather, we're seeing a noticeable cool down across the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, and Ohio Valley today. But don't worry, warmth is making a comeback. By Monday, March 17th, we'll see 7-degree temps creeping back north into South Dakota and southern Minnesota, with Texas soaring into the 80s and 90s as southerly winds return. By Tuesday, the warm-up continues. But don't get too comfortable. Another potent storm system is set to drop temperatures again midweek. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday will bring another cool spell, though by Friday, March 21st, temperatures should start rebounding again. And one last thing, wind is going to be a major factor with this next system. Strong gusts will develop across the Intermountain West on Monday, spreading into the plains by Tuesday. Chicago, St. Louis, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Wichita, Falls, get ready for a breezy day. By Wednesday and Thursday, these gusty winds will spread east, making for a windy end to the week along the eastern seaboard. So what's the big takeaway here? We've got another storm system brewing with snow, rain, and potentially more severe weather later this week. And looking even further ahead, next Sunday, March 23rd, we could be dealing with a strong storm system over the southern plains and lower Mississippi Valley, bringing another round of severe weather. So, as always, I'll be keeping a close eye on everything and updating you guys daily. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of these important updates. Like the video, give it a thumbs up and share it with friends, family, and on social media. It really helps spread the word and keep everyone informed. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next update.